bit familiar, but this is the part where it gets a little redundant when we talk about coming out of the quarantine next week.
The wacky world of MultimediaJay.
A little redundant that we're still staring at the calendar, but for good reason. So, the last several weeks have been about quarantine and lockdown and stuff like that, but also stimulus, which has stacked on top of things like unemployment and stuff like that. So what I did was I turtled in place, as I usually would do during something like this, and decided to invest some of that extra money into the side hustles and hobbies and stuff. Now, you may have heard that my videos have been sounding a little different the last few times, and that is because of this. Canon Vixia decided to modernize the cameras that I use for this whole thing, even if it means a slight drop in microphone quality. But one of the cool things about this camera specifically is it's got ports. So it has an AV out and also has a microphone. So for the first time since the Canon Allura, way the heck back when these things still took tapes, we finally have something that supports external microphones. So with that in mind, it's time to answer some questions about all of these cameras and stuff, as well as set up some equipment that I've picked up as part of this whole investing the stimulus into something that'll benefit me in the long term. The Canon, despite its sound issues, also records at a substantially higher bit rate than this thing did. So once again, we're staring at the calendar. Compare the quality of this versus the other shot, and we'll see if there's any improvement whatsoever. But I want to compare everything that I have right now for cameras, as well as fool around with what kind of external audio I can use with this one. So we're going to be flipping back and forth to this thing quite a bit as we experiment with this sort of thing. First, for comparison's sake, we're going to go way back to the last camera I had before I even went high definition. This is the old Sony Handycam that only does standard def recording. I have the quality turned up all the way. However, yeah, it's limited. So this is what I had when I was doing baby HD, way the heck back in 2013, 2014, before I picked up a 1080p camera for the first time. This is the 1080p camera, and this is the best that it can do. I forgot I had this thing in long play mode from recording a vlog last time I used it. So this is the best that it can do. The microphone sounds a little different. I always found the microphone in this to be a little tinnier than the microphone that preceded it. That annoyed me in the beginning, but the clarity eventually started to be something that I came to appreciate, especially when a lot of what I've been recording for tech videos has involved a lot of narration from behind the camera. Unfortunately, this old Sony has no way of taking an external microphone, so it always had its limits. But this is what a lot of the tech videos have been recorded on for the last several years, as I've settled in with Sony cameras, until finally deciding to give some Canon stuff another shot. Then, of course, in 2016, I needed a camera to use as a stealth camcorder, so to speak, for a trip that I was taking, so I picked up this Canon digital camera. The problem is that I got my first taste of muddy Canon microphones with this thing as well, so as much as it would have been cool to stop using camcorders because digital cameras finally got good enough, this wasn't it. Plus, the lack of an ability to really zoom slowly without zooming at least medium speed, as we're demonstrating right here, really took away from the cinematic options available with these things. So, no, digital cameras still weren't there yet, although there are plenty of YouTubers that record with DSLRs. You don't really see them doing a lot of cinematic style zooming now, do ya? But at least it's not a smartphone camera. This is the best that smartphones can do with the Blade Spark phone that I have. Everything else is worse than this. No samples of that stuff. And lastly, we have the Canon Vixia, just for comparison, with its default muddy microphone. Let's go through the special audio scenes, as they're called, settings, and let's see what that does to the audio quality. The one you've been hearing up to this point is the standard audio quality. So let's compare. This is me speaking directly at the camera, like we had to do towards the end of using the older camera because my audio was constantly off to one side because I was talking to the viewfinder instead of talking to the camera. Now, if we look at the viewfinder and we talk to the viewfinder, does it make me any clearer when we're not actually getting blocked by the camera, so to speak? Or does it put me off to the side like it did before, and the headphone users are going to think I don't know how to mix audio? So, all kinds of stuff. So, okay, this is the standard audio scene. This is the music audio scene. It's supposed to be optimized for recording music. So I'm speaking to the camera right now, and now let's speak to the viewfinder the way we did for years, and risk sounding a little bit off to the side, which is where some of the issues I've had come from, that I've had people being like, why don't you downmix everything to mono? This is speech mode. It's supposed to be the best for recording speeches. So I'm going to talk to the camera for a bit like this, and now I'm going to switch over and talk to the viewfinder. Look at the viewfinder right now at this thing in speech mode. I'm guessing recording speeches doesn't necessarily mean that it's the best thing for recording narration. This is nature mode. It's supposed to be the best at recording sounds in nature like forests and birds. So I'm speaking directly at the camera right now. Now let's start speaking directly at the viewfinder. I'm speaking directly at the viewfinder now, looking through it at the calendar yet again. You know, people are going to be cracking jokes about, is that really all the video is comparing cameras by shooting at the calendar? Oh, we do have part of the monitor in there too for monitor number 2. At least I put a title on my main series videos. And lastly, this is noise suppression mode. I don't know what it uses for noise gate settings, but it's supposed to be good for filming in crowds or near like cars and traffic and stuff. So we're going to talk for a bit directly at the camera, just like we would have previously, and that made me sound a little bit muffled. And now we're going to switch over to talking to the viewfinder. See if I sound a little bit off to the side. Or what I'm particularly interested in with this noise filter is whether or not the noise filter does its job by making me sound like I'm underwater. Okay, back to normal audio mode now. The next thing I want to test is the use of external audio devices. Like, for example, what if I plug in my old Logitech gaming headset to the camera, because unlike the newer Corsair one that I'm using for streaming, it still has mini plugs on the end. Mini plugs that fit the mic and AV out headphone jacks on this thing. Would it really be more worth it to record with headphones to get less muddy audio? And if that's the case, do we still have any way of recording in stereo by having both mics going at once and taking the narration from primarily the headphone mic and then the sounds that everything makes everywhere else from everywhere else? We shall see.
Epic fail.
The other thing we can experiment with is the Barringer Xm 8500 microphone, which I recently picked up some XLR stuff, including an XLR mixer, to give myself an analog alternative to the appliance microphones, which is the best way that I can describe a Blue Yeti. But I also picked up an XLR to Mini to see if I can get this working with the camera. So let's see how that works. I don't think it works because I think the connector is a stereo connector, and it needs to be mono in order for it to register properly with the jack. Everything registered when I was using the headset mic, but I can't even get this thing to plug all the way into the camera properly. So I'm not so certain that that XLR thing's going to work. I do know that it works with the built-in audio on a computer though, so I could always use it to hook up a real microphone to a laptop, but that's really the extent of it. And here's what I'm talking about. Now that I have 2 HDMI cameras, I can actually record this kind of footage to demonstrate what it is that I'm talking about here. Yeah, it doesn't even go in all the way. This is a stereo mini, and I think it needs to be mono in order to work with this camera properly. Well then, that's interesting. This may be called audio snapshots or whatever it is in the system, but what it really is mixer presets and EQ. And it looks like music mode is actually the best. So we'll go with that. Music mode it is for this new camera to make the most of the sound from the built-in microphone until we start finding something that can actually fit in that port. Now what on earth is this cheap Walmart monitor doing here? Find out next time on the wacky world of MultimediaJay. Till next time, this is MultimediaJay signing off. Thanks for stopping by.